Podcast 3, The Brain and Parallel Processing. The goals of Podcast 3 are to explain brain function and the brain waves, how the brain conducts parallel processing, and an assignment on how to use this information on a practical basis. Definition of parallel processing is the same as in general that we mentioned in the previous podcast, is the ability to assimilate and coordinate various internal and external stimuli and information quickly and efficiently, also known as situational awareness, and we will discuss how the brain works to allow this to happen. In 1905, Albert Einstein expanded on Planck's theory by introducing the radical idea that electromagnetic radiation has a dual wave particle nature. When we understand that light could be either a wavelength or a particle, this is what happens. When you go to the eye doctor and get examined for glasses, it's based on the wavelength theory. But what happens if how we see is really determined by the particle theory, which means by the information that we extract from the environment visually, and which will be explained. As we mentioned in the previous podcast, there's a model for understanding how we use visual information. A parallel processor uses both central and peripheral vision, or we could say, in regard to the brain, cognitive and non-cognitive functions. Flip-flop means that you use one or the other. Parvo means that you use only central or cognitive information, and magno means that you use the peripheral information or non-cognitive information. Here is a 3D model of the information processing showing that parallel processing is a sphere, flip-flop is a plane, 2 dimensions, and the magno and parvo are lines. And when we relate that to how much information that we can access to process per unit time, we see that a parallel processor has a vast amount of more information being able to be processed per unit time than either a line, which is magno or parvo, or a plane, which is 2 dimensions. The sphere is the parallel processing. These are some graphics of the brain. To point out in particular, in the upper left hand, we see on the right hand side where it says 1, the occipital area, which is the vision area, and that's what we are most interested in, as well as in the upper right hand, you have an arrow pointing to a structure called the hypothalamus, which regulates a lot of brain function, a lot of vision function, and other functions as will be described in subsequent podcasts. Here's a list showing the dichotomy between the parvo and magno systems, between the central processing and the peripheral processing. All these different terms have been used, and we see that in fact there is a distinct difference between how we process centrally and how we process peripherally, how we process cognitively and non-cognitively. Going to introduce you now to the brain waves. There's 4 popular brain waves. These are spontaneous. They occur without us doing anything. The slowest is from 0 to 3 cycles per second. And what does cycles per second mean? That in a light bulb, The light bulb flashes 60 times a second, but it's too fast for the eye to perceive the flashing. In the United States, the electricity is 60 cycles alternating current. And that's what hertz means, cycles per second. The theta waves are the next faster waves, and they're related to creativity, awakening, and going to sleep. So they're the thoughts that wake us up in the morning and prevent us from going to sleep at night. The alpha waves are from 8 to 12 hertz, and we can describe it as attention without tension, or a Zen meditative state. And as we will see, this is the parallel processing state. This is the situational awareness state. The beta are the 13 hertz and higher, and some people consider this normal, rushing around, where it seems that there's less than 60 minutes in an hour. Here's a picture of a recording of the brain waves, and we typically record the theta wave and the alpha wave from each of the brain, halves of the brain, the right brain and the left brain. And what we find is that when the alpha brainwave is large, that's when you will be in the parallel processing mode. As an assignment, pay attention to your state of mind upon awakening, just before going to sleep, when you feel most alert and when you feel less alert. If you have any questions or concerns, you can email me at this address.